everybody. Welcome to Inside Scoop with Sue. Today, I'm just so grateful to have met you, Dr. Betsy Chapman. Let me just tell you a little bit about her because she's extraordinary. She is a Ph.D. I don't know what your Ph.D. is, and you could tell us that.
It's in higher ed. Yeah.
Higher ed. Okay.
Mhm.
That makes a lot of sense. You are the executive director of family communications at Wake Forest University. And I just want to start by saying we have a mutual friend who has a kid at Wake Forest who said to me, "You've got to interview Betsy." And then I met someone randomly who told me her kid goes to Wake Forest. And I said, "Oh, do you get an email from Betsy Chapman?" And she said, "I don't think so." And I said, "Well, do you get an email from somebody telling you about like how things are going?" And she said, "Oh yeah, I get the best emails. It's unbelievable communication from Wake Forest." So number one, that title didn't exist a long time ago. Like when we went to college, there was no one talking about family communications. And, for good or bad, we need more communication, but you're so good at it that it's really, I don't know. Can you sign up for it if you're not a student?
You absolutely can. So, and I don't know if we have a chat function in here. I should have
We
looked for
do,
that.
and hopefully Jessica Port is listening, and she'll put it in there after you say it.
So, the email address or the website to sign up, it's called Daily Deek. The website is dailydeak, DAILYDEAC.WFU.edu. And there's a subscribe button. And while it is Wake Forest specific in a lot of ways, college is college in a lot of ways. And some of the advice that we give that's generic, I hope might be useful to other people. So I do encourage you to check it out. But Sue, you're so right. There were not, when you and I went to college, family relations offices or family engagement offices. If you were like my parents, you dropped me off and said, call me on Sunday, not when football's on. And, you had like a once a week conversation, pre-internet, pre-phone. But the ways that parents and families at the K-12 level interact with their kids has evolved, certainly within the last 20 years, and technology has made it easier for people to stay in touch. So we have a generation of parents, and I'm one of them. I have a high school junior who have had parent portals and websites and cell phones and ways to connect. And it's become sort of an expectation almost from parents and families that once my student who I'm so used to being connected to goes off to college, that somehow should continue. And colleges have had to grapple with the idea of what's that fine line between keeping parents and families involved and engaged versus, students need to be living that experience themselves. And so every school approaches that a little differently, but there's certainly at many, and I dare say most bigger or more well-known schools have people like me whose job it is to try to keep parents and families informed, engaged, be your first stop if you have problems or concerns. And I think that's a good thing. Sometimes somebody that works professionally with students and with families can tell you, like, this is something to worry about or this is not, or here's how to fix this, or here's how to let your student be the one to fix it. So that's some of what I do.
Well, I want to take away, you might get something out of it with you will. So if you can tell us the website, the link again, so Jessica can put it in the chat, or you can just put it,
Let me see if I can put it in the chat.
Okay, great. Because the good news is, if you didn't hear already, you can sign up for her email newsletter without having a kid at Wake Forest. And the ones I saw were quite amazing.
Yep.
Okay,
And,
so you got it?
Yep, I think I do. And remind me before I leave.
So you, Jessica, look in the private. I don't know if she can see the private chat.
Sorry.
Yep. You put it in the private chat.
Got it.
Take 1 second. We'll get it to you. And so what we're going to talk about today is, like, what are the things that you see that, here's the first question, which you can get to. Are you ready? Okay.
I am ready.
It did not go up. Okay. We're going to put that in there later. So college freshmen, and the parents of college freshmen very well. And the thing about knowing you is that you're our dream, that we could get the inside scoop on what's going on. So let's start with, what are parents most worried about?
So I should preface this by saying, in addition to being the mom of a high school junior who's a wonderful, wonderful, great kid and a good student, I am also like a weapons grade worrier. So I come from a strong worrying stock, and I think it's pretty fair to say that um, families worry about everything. And when I think about it, there's some top line worries like, are they alive? Are they safe? Are they healthy? Are they happy? Um, and going those are sort of what I would call like the bare minimum things that families tend to worry about. And then you start to think about things like, are they making good choices? Are they making dangerous choices? How are they handling things like alcohol and drugs? There's some emotional things people worry about too. All of these, I should say, are totally normal. Like, there's not any abnormal things to worry about. Are they going to be okay without me? Are they going to make friends? Will they fit in? For families who have students who are managing pre-existing conditions, whether that's mental illness, eating disorder, chronic health problems, if they're in recovery, um, are they going to be okay in their new environment? Are they going to have the supports that they need? So, you know,
That is a laundry list of things that parents are worried about. So, my first question is like, does something bubble to the top as the most common question you get?
I think right after freshmen move in, there are families that can be worried if within the first 3 to 4 days, their kid doesn't seem totally happy. Like, families are not expecting college to have a very long runway in terms of the adjustment, because most of us, if we went to college ourselves, think about our own college experience at the end of it, when everything had gone right and we'd had 4 years to, be find our people and find our friends and find our major. So you're not necessarily anticipating that the beginning can be rough, and it can be rough for everybody. And I think the big fear is within the first week or two, if they say if your student calls you or texts you or whatever way they get in touch, I'm lonely, I'm sad, I haven't made friends yet. Those kinds of things. Those are all really, really normal things, but they don't feel normal when you're the one on the other end of that phone. So I think just not anticipating the adjustment part is is one of the biggest things that they worry about. Like, oh
Yeah,
my God, did they pick the wrong school? Because they don't seem like 1,000% happy on day one.
yeah, we're not patient. We are not patient.
Well, and
Okay.
we haven't done a good job helping our high school aged kids understand that you don't step foot on what you think was your dream school and everything's going to be like a bowl of cherries from day one. I talk to my academic advisees sometimes and say, college is sort of like falling in love. It's rare that it's the lightning bolt and everything is perfect from day one. Love grows over time, and it's true for college too. It's just a lot of adjustment. Certainly a full semester, often for students a full year before they feel like this is their place and they're happy. And we just, as families, have to be patient and let that process unfold, because most of them will get there eventually, and some would transfer, and that's okay if you end up in the place that's not for you. But it's really a long transition, but we don't expect for it to be.
Okay, so in that long transition where we're impatient and patience is what is required, what is the best way for parents to help their kids during that time? Because it's like, let's say we hear you say that, the first bunch of days are really rough, and some people it may take a semester or a year. Uh, Is that happening on its own, or does it require intervention?
I think the most important part for parents and families is that we have to do a good job of managing our own discomfort about our students' discomfort. And that is extraordinarily hard. I fight this with myself all the time. We have to be okay with understanding that our students are going to have bad days and they're far away from us perhaps, and we can't fix that. And bad days doesn't mean, it's tragic. It means that they need to work through those feelings on their own. So I think, one of the best gifts we can give our kids as they go to college is let us take care of our own emotions and make sure that we can stay grounded in whatever that way that form takes, whether that's you have a therapist you talk to, you have a priest, rabbi, pastor you talk to your hairdresser or your book club. Have some people with whom you can process your, like, oh, I feel anxious about this, and work through that sort of separate from your child, because one of the things we don't want to do is burden our kiddos with the worries that we might have about them. So some of it is just coming to the realization that, um, bumps in the road are normal and to be expected. And to a certain extent, summer's a great time to start talking to your kids about that before they head off to start college. There may be loneliness, you may have roommate difficulties, you might feel like you're out of your league in your classes. I explain it to my advisees sort of like it feels like you're walking on quicksand for a while, like the ground just isn't steady. And sometimes if you know that ahead of time, that makes that a little bit easier. So if it does hit you like, wow, I feel like I'm out of my league in this class, you can go, oh, mom, dad, or a loved one talked to me this summer and said, don't worry if you feel that. It's going to take some time to get settled. So I think it's a combination of figuring out how do we get okay with the idea that our kids don't have to be 100% happy every moment of the day, that it's normal to have a bad day, to have a roommate disagreement, to have something you don't like about your residence hall. But that doesn't mean the college experience isn't working for them.
Yeah, I mean, it's so much easier to deal with our own pain than our kids' pain, right? Like,
100%. Yeah,
um,
there's nothing that hurts us like our kids hurting.
yeah. The other thing is that I don't even think it's a maybe. I think taking away this is going to be the greatest 4 years of your life and replacing it with the transition may be rough is like setting realistic expectations. Nobody doesn't benefit from that. Let me put
Right.
it this way: everybody benefits from that.
Yeah, I mean that's something our students need to know, but it's also something we need to remember as families that college will be an adjustment. And I talk to my advisees sometimes and say you're starting your college experience after you just finished 12th grade, where you are at the top of your sort of safety sense of personal safety in high school, in terms of like, who am I, who is my friend group, I have my people, I have my interests, and then you have to start all over from zero. For many students, some folks might go to college and there's other folks from their high school that go, but for many students, you know they're starting over, and you have to remember, like, how do I make friends in a new space? How do I it's not all sort of set and gelled for you. So talking about some of those things ahead of time really can make a difference.
So let's ask the question. I mean, I think we hit on it, but are there things that you see incoming freshmen worried about that aren't what we just spoke about? Like that their perspective is something very different than what we're thinking about?
I don't think it's something super different than some of the things we've already talked about. I think one of the biggest ones is like, am I going to fit in? Am I going to find friends? Did I pick the right place? And it's really kind of compounded and made worse by this little device, where they can see all of their friends at other schools' social media feeds, where it looks like, if only I had picked, University of Georgia instead of Emory, I would be living my best life like my friend Sally is. So I think we have to help, and again, summer's a great time to do this, help our students understand that what they see on social media from their friends at other schools is a very carefully curated um, picture of what they're experiencing. Nobody's going to post a picture where you're in your dorm room feeling left out and sad. They're going to post it when they're with five friends, like doing something super cool. And how to help our students treat some of that social media presence with skepticism. um, I think the other thing that students worry about doesn't have anything to do with college proper, but they worry about what's happening at home. If at home they're worried that you're going to miss them too much, or they're worried that their little brother or their little sister is going to feel um, lonely, or if anyone in the family is managing a significant health concern, or other things, like, they want to know that things are okay at home and that you're okay without them. So I think it's really important, as you work through whatever your communication strategy is with how often you're going to talk and so forth, make sure they feel like they know what's going on at home, and that you're okay, that you're still doing the same kinds of things. Like, if you always played tennis, keep playing tennis. If or tell them you've picked up a great new hobby now that you have some extra time on your hands, to sort of help them know that everything's still okay. So I
Okay,
do think that's important.
you said something in there that you said lightly, but I think like a lot of people don't realize. You said after you set up the schedule for communication.
Hmm.
What does that mean?
Well, this is the million-dollar question for families, right? And for students too. Like, how and when should I communicate with my beloved kiddo? And I think there, you know, I often say to students and to families too, there's not a right or wrong. There's what's right for your family. But I think you want to give your kid a fairly generous berth in deciding what that communication looks like. Like, I don't necessarily think it's realistic for us as a parent or family member to say, I want you to call me every day. um, you could lightly suggest, like, I might very well say to my kid, like, let your poor mother know, send her a text every day to let her know she's alive, that you're alive. And that may be sort of a cheeky way to get at it, but um, a lot of families can worry if they don't hear from their student very often that things aren't going well. And generally, if you're not hearing from that, means things are going great. Like, they don't need to touch base with you, right? So one of the things you can talk about in the summer is sort of expectations. How often do I want to hear from you, beloved child? And beloved child, what is your thought about how often you think you want to talk to me? Another piece to that, though, is especially within the first few weeks of school. I tell this to families all the time, and it makes me sound like a monster, and I don't mean for it to. Don't pick up right away. And the reason that I say that is a lot of times what people in my position see is students will walk out of class, particularly first year students, and as soon as they get out of the building, they'll pick up the phone and they'll be like, "Hey mom, hey dad, hey brother, hey sister," and sometimes that motivation is because they don't want to seem like they're alone, like they don't have anybody to walk with, they haven't made friends yet, and so they don't want to look like they don't have friends, so you're going to use that phone as a crutch. um, but what that does is, if you are a student and you're seeking that sort of affirmation and connection, and like, I'm okay, I can't talk with a friend because I'm busy talking to my mom, that keeps you from meeting other people and talking to other people. So so I tell families frequently, let it roll to voicemail. Like, if it's an emergency, they'll text you and they'll say, like, 911, I need you right now. But a lot of times, if it's just they're talking to you because they don't know what else to do to fill that space, let them walk on their own. Let them make eye contact with somebody else on the sidewalk. Let them say hello to a classmate, um, just so they can start connecting with other people. And sometimes that can help if we don't immediately sort of respond.
Okay, and what I do and did, because that was too hard for me to let that call go, is I would instead text and say, "Hey, in a meeting, is it an emergency?"
Yep,
And
that's a great way to
it's
do it too.
literally
Absolutely.
never been an emergency.
Yep.
But just for peace of mind, I had to do it. But
Yeah.
I love the advice. I didn't do it for that reason, but I think it's so true. There's a small period of time where everybody's vulnerable when they've all started school at the same time. And if you keep protecting yourself with your phone, you miss out on those moments.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm skipping sort of way ahead and thinking about things, but families sometimes will ask us, um, after I drop my student off, how soon should I leave? And my typical answer, and I think my counterparts at other schools would say this: if there are parent and family orientation activities, stay for those if you can. And when they're done, go home. Don't add an extra day or two or three on it, because the more times you are taking your student out to breakfast or lunch or whatever, that's time that they could be getting to know their roommate or their hallmates, or other things. It just makes it sort of harder down the line. Um, so knowing when is a good time to go, and again, balancing the, like, this is, I mean, and I'm the mother of an only child. Once he goes, my husband and I are it here. It's us and the dogs. So we're going to miss him terribly. um, but you got to keep, the short game is, I want to make myself feel better because I want to see my kid longer. The long game is, it's going to be better for him if I get the heck out of there and let him, which is harder to do the longer I stay. So again, easy
Yeah.
for me to say because I haven't done it yet, but I'm a year out, so I'm trying to
Well,
steel
it's easy
myself.
for you to say, but also honestly, hearing it and thinking about it will give you a much like you're going to do it, even though it's going to be painful, and
Yep.
you want to stay a little bit longer. You're going to do it because you know it in advance. So thank you for giving that to us as well. Okay, do you anticipate that this incoming class, who has had a really unusual experience in high school, that there are going to be differences in the transition for them?
I do and I don't. And it's on some level easier for me to say why I don't. You know, Unless they had a college experience someplace else and left and are restarting again, they don't have any idea what college is going to be. So whatever their experience is going to be their normal. Um, so I think, they've lived through the sort of weirdness and isolation of the pandemic, and they've also lived through political and social unrest and global unrest. So I think our kids that are going in now and next year or whatever could have a certain amount of anxiety about like what shoe is going to drop next, because so many crazy things have have happened. um but I think the hardest thing for students are some of the things that are eternal, like how do I make friends, um how do I fit in, I'm starting over, some of the things we talked about now. So I think those are the eternals that sort of fly above the pandemic. The other good news too, I think, is that our students are pretty good. Like, this is a good generation in terms of being willing to ask for help. They are not afraid of help seeking behavior generally. So, you know, if they're struggling, what I would talk about over the summer is like, if you're struggling, you got to tell somebody. It doesn't have to be me as your mother. It could be your RA, it could be the counseling center, it could be, one of your faculty members. Like, find an adult essentially that you can talk to, and they can point you in the right direction. But um I think, I think for a lot of students, like, even with everything that's happened, they're excited to go. Like, especially if they'd been homeschooled during the pandemic, like, this is like, an opportunity for fun and freedom and to stretch their wings. So I think there will be a balance of joy and excitement and anxiety and a pretty wide range of emotions as they transition.
Okay, we're going to show Jerry. Jerry's our favorite grandfather. As a
Oh, I love
grandparent,
grandparents.
I always felt and feel that my phone call should be a feel good call and try to make it such.
That's terrific advice. Jerry's dead on. Um, and there's something to be said for whether it's a phone call, or you can just send them a little text, you know, saying, hey, I was just thinking of you. You don't have to respond. Just wanted to let you know I love you and I'm having a good day. Or text a picture of their pets. Their pets are the worst in terms of they can talk to you or text you, but they're not going to get, their dog or their cat or their beloved animal. So you can shoot them a little something from home that gives them a little momentary boost, but it's just a blip and they can kind of go on in their day. But Jerry's right on.
Okay, if you're thinking about this opportunity, summer's an opportunity. Um, what should parents be thinking about doing? Like, is one of my kids once said to me, enough with the life lessons, because I was like following her around all summer long. And she was right about that. But what's productive over the summer?
So I'm searching as we talk. I'm going to drop a link now that I've realized that there's public chat. I'm going to drop a link in here as well. If you give me just a second to find it,
Sure.
I think there are some things that we can do that would certainly help. And we have a little section on our Wake Forest website. Just let me grab the URL really quick about advice that um, advice that might be helpful. Now, hold on. Let me find. Sorry, I'm having just
That's
a
okay.
moment of
I
struggle.
got your link to if you want to sign up for her email. How often do you put out an email?
I do it every day for reasons I don't understand. I'm gonna have to put that in the private chat, and maybe you can move it over to the public comments.
I did.
Um,
I just
okay,
did. Yeah.
No, I just added a new one
Oh,
for
ah,
this advice page. So, in terms of stuff for the summer, there are a lot of conversations that are worth having, and it can be less. Your point's well taken, Sue, about your parents or your kids don't want to hear you talking about every life lesson in the world, but there's some things worth talking about. Um, I tell families, cover all the hard topics, and every family has different things that they want to talk about, but you should be talking about budgeting. You should be talking about, expectations about grades, expectations about contact. One of the things I think it's important to talk about is, students have a high number of privacy rights while they're in college. Mom and dad don't get grades automatically. Their doctor at the student health service is not automatically going to call you. So have some conversations about, what you as family members and loved ones want to want to know and what your students are willing to give you access to. I get a question fairly frequently about things like signing over healthcare power of attorney. And the example I always give is, if I had a year-long healthcare power of attorney that I had to sign for my parents, um, I would have been fine for them talking to the school doctor or the school nurse when I had, bronchitis and we thought I'd broken a rib, but I don't want them to see that I went in for a pregnancy test. So some of the considerations you have to work through are, um, I want to be able to talk about the things like if you're really sick, I need to see if I, do I need to come down and help you? But there are things that your students might not want you to have access to. So then you can have a conversation about you can authorize your medical faculty or your medical team at every given visit. Like, yep, it's okay to talk to mom or dad about this, but we're going to keep this other one just between us. So have some of those conversations. But I also,
There's a website for forms like Legal Bears or something. I can't remember what it is. Do you know what
yeah,
it is?
it is. And I again, people have very strong feelings about these, and I'm not necessarily saying there's a right or a wrong, but I think it's a myth for some families that if I have a medical power of attorney and I somehow send it to the school, that if they're in a car accident at 2 a.m., somebody's going and pulling that paper and sending it to the hospital. And that's not really the way that works,
Yeah.
And your kid could be on a road trip visiting a friend at another school, and there's nobody that can get that paperwork to them. So I think it's important to have those conversations about what's expected, um, but in a way that still respects your students' authority and autonomy. Um, because some of them, we have students who experience, mental health issues where a clinician says, you might very much benefit from this particular medicine. And if they think mom or dad are getting the bill or getting the, have the ability to call up at any moment and say, did somebody tell you to put my kid on an antidepressant? They might not get treatment. And what we as administrators always want to avoid is situations where a student doesn't want to get treatment for something they need because they're afraid that someone has access to their records. So those are the kinds of hard conversations to have.
Yeah, that's a really tough position because you're protecting the kid and I'm protecting my kid, right? Like I want to be
Right.
in there.
There's
Yeah.
a lot of delicate sort of balance and tension in that. But I also think like as you think about the summer and things to do to help your student prepare, like the natural things you think about is, do they know how to do laundry? And that's necessary, right? But I think it's important to give them a lot of space to practice other things. Like if they have to have a physical to like of some kind of physical and have paperwork from their doctor turned in before they start school, let your kid be the one to make that doctor's appointment. Let them be the one that's responsible for getting the form, printing it out, turning it in. And those sound like they're tiny things, but everything that we can do that helps them practice being self-managing over the summer puts them in better position to be able to do it once they get there, because we're going to leave. We're going to drive off that campus, go out the gates, and they have to be ready to do everything, whether that's grocery shopping or even thinking ahead, like, do I have a spare deodorant? This one's running low. So as much practice as you can give them with some of those very tactical household types of things. How do I plan for meals and supplies? How do I order things online? How do I send them back if what I ordered I don't like? Like, let them do that. And if they make tiny mistakes along the way, that's okay. Learn how to figure those out so when they um they're ready when school starts. Like, we want to know that they can do it without us. And that's both like wonderful and also very hard to let go of, because we like taking care of, as we
Yeah.
should. That's been our job as parents and loved ones.
Yep. Okay, my last question. Tell
Yep.
us the pros and cons of the Facebook groups that
Yep.
parents go on.
These Facebook groups are wonderful tools for some things and sort of terrible tools for other things. So um there are a lot of private Facebook groups where some enterprising parents and families will have set up, either for everybody in the school or just for the incoming class. Some people do them by grade. Frequently, they are not monitored or managed by anyone at the university. So you have to sort of understand whether this is quote unquote official or whether this is, just a bunch of parents and families talking. So I think the biggest pro of those groups is that it allows you to connect with other people who are in the same boat. They are all people who have kids at your particular school. They all love their kids and miss their kids. And sometimes knowing that there are other people going through that same stuff is really helpful. Those groups can be terrific for recommendations for things that are not university specific. For other words, like, are there better hotels to stay at? What restaurants do you like? I'm coming for a weekend and I'm trying to think of some fun things to do in the area. Like, mine that those Facebook groups for that kind of data. The downside to those groups, there's a few things. So one is that if you are using that to answer questions about university process, policy, etc., that's not your best source necessarily, because I can tell you as an administrator, lots of things change from year to year. The way the meal plan worked 2 years ago when Sue's kids started, if I ask a question as an incoming parent and Sue answers, here's how this is, that may not be the way it is today. So we have lots of well-meaning people in these groups who are talking from their own experience without realizing that some of those processes can change. So it's always better to go to an official source, go to the college website, talk to an actual staff member. Don't ask your text group or a Facebook group or your kid's roommate, how did that work? So go to the official source on that. The other sort of fall to some of those groups, families can, again, from a well-meaning, intentioned place, share things about their kids' experience that their children would be absolutely horrified to know that you've shared. Like, um, I'm 3 weeks in and my daughter hasn't made any friends. Your daughter would be horrified to know that their mom or dad has outed them as, having a bad experience. So that is definitely a no. And what I would say to that is, before you post something in one of those groups that's about your kid's individual experience, ask yourself if you would tag your daughter in that post or tag your son in that post. And if they would kill you if they saw that out there, that's your moment to know, I should not be posting this. Again, that's what you take away to your private, in real life friends, therapist, coach. Um, the other thing I think it's important to encourage families not to do in those groups is to do work that your students are meant to do. So, for example, um, if they're trying to find roommates for next year, housing selections coming up. My daughter still hasn't found a roommate, or my son hasn't found a roommate. Is anyone else in the same boat? Can we pair our kids together? Our kids would probably kill us if they knew we were doing that. um, or I need a ride, my student needs a ride to the airport on X day for spring break. Is anybody else going at that same time? So again, that's sort of a short game, long game. The short game is, you could find your student a roommate or find your student a ride to the airport, and that solves an immediate problem, but it hasn't made your student any more independent in knowing how to do those things for themselves. So another way to sort of think about this is your kid would not be able to use a knife and fork if you kept cutting their meat for them. There's got to be a point at which we transition some of those jobs over to our kids. So anything that they can be doing, they have an active social network. There's lots of different people that they know on campus. They would learn something if they talk to their student organization they're in and saying, hey, I need a ride to the airport at X time. Can anybody help me? They don't get to learn that if we do that for them. So I would keep that kind of stuff off those Facebook groups as well.
All right, Dr. Betsy Chapman, so much fabulous information. I think the best thing to walk away with is the long game and the short game, because I think that it's very hard for us as parents to look at the long game. But you've brought it up several times, and I think it's really valuable. Everything you said is so valuable. Thank you for saying yes to coming on here.
Well, my pleasure as always. And like I said, I'm trying to say all these things so I remember them next year, or a year plus from now when it's my turn.
All
So
right, we'll get back to you then.
sounds good. Thanks so much.